expert with over 35 years of experience and a passion for people first focused leadership. James has climbed the ranks from entry level technician to senior vice president at Executech, and now shares his wealth of knowledge and experience to help others be their best. In this live interview, we'll delve into James's intentional entrepreneurial journey from zero to hero and explore his tips and advice for achieving success, overcoming obstacles, and developing the mindset and habits necessary to achieve financial stability and prosperity. Join us as we uncover the secrets to James' success and discover how to unleash your inner hero and live the life of your dreams. And this fabulous person has actually co-authored a book, A Journey to Riches, Motivate Your Life, which is available on Amazon, right, James? It's available on Amazon. You can just definitely go there, just type in the title and definitely get to it. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sabir. Very honored to be here, man.
So every superhero has a backstory. So what was your pivotal decision you made in your career that led you to your success as a leader in the IT industry?
Actually, mine was hunger. So I don't know if you've ever felt the urge of going hungry, but I went hungry, and that's what did it for me. I was like, all right, life has to be different. So let me give a little bit of backstory, if I may. So most of my life, I was the super shy kid. I was too scared to ask women on dates, so I didn't go to any dances in high school. Just super shy, and I had a really low self-esteem growing up. So I didn't have very much luck with work either. I couldn't seem to hold down a job very long, and I ended up doing the jobs that really nobody else wanted to do. I was unloading semi-trucks. I assisted with a neighbor doing siding, outdoor home covering over winter time. I helped a friend with rebuild his mom's house, things like that. And I think a couple of culmination points for me. So one was a relative of mine came and said, "Hey, come do construction with me. It'll be a great, entry in." I'm like, "All right, let's do it." I had to buy steel-toed shoes that were required on the job, so I spent like what little money I had buying steel-toed shoes. And I went there and met the contractor, and he said, "So, do you have any skills with framing?" "No." "Do you have any skills with concrete?" "No." "Okay, I got a job for you. Come here." And he showed me this. It must have been like 30-foot pile of gravel, and he said, "All right, I need you to move this pile of gravel from over here to over there." And he gave me a shovel. And he said, "Find a wheelbarrow somewhere around here." And it was just, credit to anyone who does that kind of work, but this was just not how I saw my life going. It was backbreaking and brutal. I lasted about an hour, and I'm like, this is just not for me. And I went home feeling miserable and sorry for myself. I really did. But that wasn't the end of my lesson yet. So over time, the bills started to pile up. I wasn't working very much. And eventually I got to the point where I realized I was running out of food. I was watching the cupboard get more and more bare every day. And I decided to do something I probably shouldn't have done. I thought, you know what, I'm going to take my checkbook and I'm going to write something that I know is going to bounce. I'm going to write a bad check. I need the food. So I went to the grocery store and I loaded up a cart with food. Well, I guess the clerk somehow knew it too. He kept delaying, saying, "Oh, there's a kind of problem here. Hang on, hang on." The next thing I know, there was police behind me and they were escorting me out of the store. So that was yet another low point in my life that made me decide this was not for me. But the lowest point came still to come as I watched my food just dwindle. My mom was slipping me money when she could, and I was still working those odd jobs, but it just wasn't keeping up. And eventually I opened the cupboard. I knew it was coming. I just tried to ignore it, to pretend it wasn't happening. Maybe something would save me. But I opened the cupboard one day, and the only thing I had to eat for the entire day was a leftover jar of peanut butter. And that was the low point of my time. And that's when I remember just like, I'm not ashamed to say I had tears streaming down my face, man. It was brutal. I was ashamed. I felt miserable and guilty, and like I couldn't even take care of myself. And I knew what was next for me was the street. And then some kind of fire fired up inside me and said, I just remember screaming out loud saying, "This is not what I came here to do. This was not how I was going to live." I made a decision right then and there that I was going to change the course of my life. I was not going to head down this path and stay down that path. That was really the pivotal point for me.
It must have been very horrifying, when you're going through those kind of low points. I've had my own share of those kind of challenges throughout my life, especially when you're younger, when you are I think you have enough skill set if you have gone to a technical college or get a technical degree, whatever that technical is. I don't mean computers. I mean, it could be anything, right?
Yeah.
You could be air conditioning repair person. It doesn't matter. But the thing is, you have had the education to do those kinds of things, and you're ready to do them, but you're not there yet, and you're just looking for that break so that you can get in there, so that you can show people and start earning some money. But it's like
Exactly.
it's the chicken or the egg. Even though you have the experience and you paid for it, now you have to pay that down, and just life keeps on throwing its punches at you.
Yeah, just trying to get you to the curb. Yeah, I was pretty skilled at computers at the time, but I didn't have a piece of paper that said I could do it, and no one would take my word for it. No one would trust me that I could do the job. So
Yeah, one of the things talking about the paperwork and computers, even though I'm known as a business growth hacker now, right?
yeah.
That's what I do. I grow businesses and I scale them and stuff like that. My background since childhood has been computer science, and I got a
Oh,
degree.
nice,
I did get a degree in computer science, a
cool.
bachelor's degree, coded a ton of millions of lines of code, a ton of it. What it taught me, in this part of my journey now, which I have been on for 20 years now, 20 plus years, what it taught me as a computer scientist, my mind is very organized in two ways. One, everything has to make sense in its own boxes, right?
Right,
And number
right,
two, at the time I came out as a computer scientist, I had to know physics and I had to know mathematics.
mm,
The mathematics part of it, uh, numbers make a lot of sense to me, right? If it's not in numbers, I can turn anything into numbers. And then once you put it into numbers, you can modify it, right? Because you write it
right.
down on the floor of your factory that we put out 50 boxes today. You know what's going to happen tomorrow? Somebody's going to put out 52
To
boxes.
do, yep, exactly.
That's what's
Yeah,
going to happen. Believe me, it works all the time. The psychology there works all the time, you know? So to me that always made sense. So when I started tackling business and marketing and learning from that, because I never got a degree in that, it's just whatever I learned on the street and what I learned, turning around these businesses over the past 25 years, because my mind was wired that way.
yeah,
That's how things made sense to me, even in the world of business and marketing. And thank God for e-commerce, everything is about numbers, right? So which
right.
is which is great for me. I love it. Even brand equity, brand awareness has a number associated with it,
Yeah.
and then you could work on that and do that. So in your case, like, given the fact that you had a very similar kind of a background, like from a technical standpoint, IT and cybersecurity. I did work in cybersecurity at one point in my career.
Cool.
So how did that, like, looking at IT and cybersecurity and what I just shared with you about my background, how did it shape your leadership skills, style, and approach to, managing organizations and managing an IT organization?
I had always been fascinated by leadership. Even as a kid, I remember I would read even fictional books. What I would take from them was the way the leader led people. So I was always looking for what's the best way. I just had this belief that I would lead someday. Even as a kid, I had a dream to lead people. And back then, I couldn't see it. Right? It was like I'm this gawky, tall, skinny kid with low self-esteem. I have no idea how I'm going to lead people, but that was my dream. I knew I wanted to. So I'd always been, whether it was a movie or a radio show, anything, a book mostly. I read a lot of reading. I was taking from them, what is it about that leader that really inspired those other people? So I'm not sure what about my past led me to that, other than the fact that I was really studying leadership my whole life, even growing up. Yeah, and I wanted to lead. I wanted to lead the way people wanted to be led, not because I was commanding, but because I earned their respect, right? Um, not through trust, not through micromanagement, things like that. And I really got that just from studying past leaders more than anything else.
So you study, right? I did the same thing. Study a
Yeah,
ton, like
yeah,
150 books a year.
yep,
So study plenty. You have the motivation, and then life throws its lessons at you as a leader. Goes like,
exactly.
great, you learn all those things, put it up behind you.
Yeah,
Now I'm going to teach you a lesson.
right.
So what were some of those kind of challenges in your leadership, in your early leadership, that you learned?
So at 18 years old, I was convinced I was meant to be a leader. So I found this lady who was running a fast food place, and at 18 years old, I convinced her I could manage her store for her. I was very convincing. I was certain. I had so much certainty that I could do this job. And yet, when I got there, I was awful. I had the mindset. I believed I could do it. I had the skills because I read and read, studied and studied, but I didn't communicate at all. I was afraid to speak to people. I was afraid to have tough conversations. So I bombed that something fierce, man. So that was definitely one of the biggest challenges I had was learning what not to do. Um, let's see, what else I went into. Uh, some of the other ones probably were, belief in myself, right? Could I actually do this job? I came from nothing. How do I get myself to be able to do that? What I've discovered is that if you have a dream, first of all, just go for it, because even though you may not have the skills right now, there's something about the path you will take that will give you the skills you need. It just always seems to work out that way. If you have a dream, and it's like me when I was a kid, I had a dream that I was going to be a leader. Yet I looked at that and I'm like, there's no way. I have no idea how I'm going to lead a whole bunch of people. Yet here I am standing before you, a leader in many facets of my life. So I believe with 100% certainty, and I've seen this not only in my own life, but in the life of others, that when you decide to start on that dream and you start putting one foot in front of the other and doing those scary things and pushing past your comfort zone, that you will acquire the skills along the way you need to be who you need to be when you get there.
Yeah, what's funny is what you said there, that when you take that action, this is what I have found in my career, right? In my life, right? When you take that next step, and I'll explain what that next step is. The next step could be that you want to take it or you are forced to take it. And what
Yep.
do I mean by that? Let's say you have a leadership position working for XYZ company. It's happening a lot now in 2023, right? A lot of people are getting laid off and stuff. Even though you didn't take that step, somebody else took that step for you, and now you're let go, right? A
Yeah.
lot of people, what they do is they mope. They say, oh, "Why me? Why did it happen to me? I was such a good worker. This, and that." Right? But believe me, 10 years from now, when they reflect back on that moment in their life that they thought that that was the best job that they ever had, then they think about all the things that have happened, all the other doors that opened up subsequent to the fact that you exited that company. You
Exactly.
go like, you know what? None of those things would have happened. I
If
can
I
tell you
hadn't
that
been, yep.
if I revert back to like 10, 15 years ago with the things that didn't go my way, if I had not done that, I could not have co-founded a company with Gary Vaynerchuk. I could not have met the sharks on Shark Tank, I could not have worked with a lot of celebrities that I work with right now, right?
Yeah.
That's how I reflect on things. Like, even though right then and there when you're going through that thing, right? It's horrible. I'm not gonna underscore that. It's horrible when you're going through it, even
Yeah.
in that kind of a negative experience. But believe me, as long as you set your goal and motivate yourself to say, you know what, let's move on. Let's move on to doing the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And believe me, when you get off your bed and go and attend a networking meeting that you didn't even know that you would meet either a spouse of yours, future spouse, or a future co-founder that will co-found a company with you. You don't know that unless you
Yeah.
get off your butt and go and do something, whatever that
Do the
something
scary
is.
things. Do the scary actions. It seems to always be something out of our comfort zone.
I actually I interviewed a phenomenal woman on this show. It's one of the episodes in this season. She met her husband because she wanted to do a journal for her college newspaper, and went and interviewed, which she had never done before, interviewed this phenomenal chef who just
Nice.
happened to become her husband in future.
That's awesome.
And that's a
So
pretty scary thing as a college
yeah,
student to go out and interview like a high profile chef.
right, right. For me, I met the woman of my dreams because I stepped up. So I told you I was a shy kid, super shy, right? I would never talk to a woman. I didn't dance with anybody in high school. And I met my wife by doing that. I had to step up. I had to have this conversation with a total stranger. And it took everything I had. I actually left. I'm like, I can't do this. There's no way. And I left. And all the way back to my office, I was kicking myself in the butt going, I gotta have this conversation. I got to the parking lot, and I told the buddy I was with, I'm like, get out. He's like, what? I go, get out. He goes, you're going back, aren't you? I said, yes, I am. And I went back there, and so I thought I was all like, suave about the whole thing. I'm like, hi, my name's James. She said my hand was like, I don't know if it was, but that's what she claims anyway.
You thought you were Rico Suave when
I was like, hey, baby. But she said it also proved to her that I wasn't some kind of player, because I was obviously scared out of my wits to have this conversation. So that's how I met my wife, actually, that I'm with now. So
going back to leadership styles, the person that you see in front of you right now is a very different person than when I was in the IT field and leading people. Horrible person. I can tell you that on camera, live. I'm saying to the audience, this guy who seems like a nice guy now was a horrible person. Reflecting back on my Sabir as a 25-year-old, right?
Okay.
In that period, I was very focused on deliverables and what needed to get done.
Yeah.
So it was process, procedure, and outputs. That's it. I did not care about the people side of it. Did not. I'm being very super honest with you. Either if you either knew your C++ coding skills and Java, or you didn't, and then you were in the other camp, outside the other side of the door. That really horrible. Very focused, right? So when I read about your focus on people first, right?
Yeah.
That's a very different kind of a leadership style. And when I say that's who I was, I see that in a lot of other people in the IT field right now that are growing up, and they go from being an engineer to being a development manager to becoming a supervising, whatever, and then they become a director of programming and coding and stuff like that, and they keep on frameworks and SVP and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think that if you don't balance it, I believe that you actually are hindering your growth as an individual. So you may have the technical skill sets of a manager, but you don't have leadership skills at all.
Exactly. Yeah. Unfortunately, the coder who does really well gets promoted to supervisor. And then he goes from supervisor to manager, and suddenly all those skills that they used to code are not needed anymore, and a whole new set of skills are required. And it's a big, tough jump for a lot of people if they don't already have. To me, it's all about having that passion. Like, for me, it was all about how can I make their lives better? I started asking myself, what kind of boss would they want? What kind of boss could I be that they would earn their respect? How can I earn their trust? And questions like that were really what inspired me to be a better leader.
Now, I had flashed that book earlier in your bio about Motivate Your Life, right? Which you co-authored with other amazing people. What were your key takeaways that you hope the readers take away from that writing?
Yeah, one of them is certainly that most of us have a belief that motivation is going to suddenly strike us, like lightning is going to hit, and I'm suddenly going to be motivated to do whatever it is that I'm afraid or I'm hesitant about or I'm holding off on. And the truth is that it's never going to happen. Motivation does not strike us. Motivation is created. So you must have a vision of some kind. Think of something that you really want. And, especially if it's scary, then you've nailed it, right? Something that I really want, but it's too scary to go for. That's the kind of thing you want to land on. Start seeing yourself doing that thing. What kind of person would it take to be that? What would that person think? What would that person do? What kind of habits would that person have in order to be that person? So to me, motivation is created. It doesn't just suddenly strike you out of nowhere. That's a big key one for sure.
Yep. Now, what I just said earlier about, taking that into account, what I said about Sabir at 25, right?
Yeah.
To me, balancing my technical expertise, which I can attest it to myself, even though I'm patting myself when I was younger, I would say that I was highly technical, right?
Sure.
One of the best people, best coder, best designer, best everything, right? Well, when it comes to the people side of the equation, I can tell you, reflecting back, I sucked big time, right? Horrible person. So how do you balance your technical expertise, whatever that technical, in your case being IT and cybersecurity, balancing that with strong leadership skills? Because being an engineer, I mean, if you watch the show, the TV show, when it was on, Big Bang Theory, you can get a reflection of technical people, right? Technical people who are smart at what they do.
Sure.
When it comes to people skill, it's zero. It's almost non-existent, right? But
Right.
how do you balance those two? Because you have to run an IT organization.
Yeah, you got to realize that there's an extrovert inside you. Believe it or not, I know a lot of I work with a lot of techs who would just rather stay in the basement and work away in the dark with their hoodie on, right, and actually go meet people. But there is an extrovert and an introvert in all of us, and we need to embrace that extrovert. We got to bring out the person who wants to have a conversation. We want to make connection with people. The truth is, we all want to make connection with people. We all want to have a conversation. So it really starts with, do you have a passion for leadership? Because I really believe that's it. If you have a passion for something, you're going to learn about it. You're going to take the time outside of work to learn, to study, to grow, to get better about it. When you fall on your face at work, right? Someone writes you a terrible review or a bad 360. What do you do differently in the future? So to me, it starts with a passion for leadership. If you don't have that, then I think you're probably in the wrong path. You got don't go down a path just because it's more money or you're looking for a great title. Do it because you really want to help people. You want to make a difference in their lives. That's the key to leadership, in my opinion.
I mean, I've used this example on the show so many times because it's very easy to understand, right, for most people. The people who know how to run a restaurant know how to run a restaurant really well.
Yeah.
People who are amazing Michelin star chefs, they are amazing Michelin star chefs. In the back of the restaurant, they are the ones creating these amazing food creations and stuff like that.
Yes.
Now, let's switch those two. The chef is
Right.
gonna draw audience to come in to put asses in those seats right in the restaurant and fill it up. And the guy who knows, or the gal that knows how to socialize the front of that restaurant to bring
Yeah.
people in, now is going to go cook in the kitchen. What do you
Coordinate and
think is
lead
going
all
to
those people. Yeah, it's a challenge, that's for sure.
right? Well, I mean, one of the things that I think in the IT industry that I think there needs to be another path, right, where people who are exceptional at what they do. There are amazing coders that are phenomenal. They do dynamic programming, and I'm being a nerd now, dynamic programming. They can solve problems. They can cut down the time of execution. Amazing, amazing work, right?
Yeah.
By the time they get to do amazing things, they go like, oh, you know what? Given their paycheck now, we have to turn them into a director or a VP, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
now, oh, what does that mean? The big paycheck comes with you have to have an organization of 3 to 5 people of coders. You're going to be overseeing them.
Yep.
What if that guy wants to be an amazing chef?
Exactly.
Doesn't want to go to the front of the office and the wait staff and whatever the front does. Doesn't want to do any of that stuff. That they're just phenomenal at what they're doing, and I think it's just a disservice to the organization too, because you just took your number one coder and then said, oh, you know what? Now you're going to be a manager. you know and time and time again, I see that happening pretty regularly in every field, where phenomenal people, instead of them going on a route to becoming extremely phenomenal, right, at what the craft they do, they get switched into some sort of a business role, and then they leave this amazing skill set behind.
Yeah, I think every tech track needs a knowledge base expert, or some equivalent to that. In our world, we call them knowledge base experts, right? You're an expert at this. Let's get you certified. Let's get you all the training. Let's make you an uber expert at all this stuff. Because yeah, you're going to fall on your face as a manager, and the people underneath you are going to hate you. And let's not set you up for failure. Let's make sure you're on a path to success for sure.
Yeah, unless the person has the ambition and says, oh, you know
Right.
what, now I would like to, because I live in New York, I want to go to NYU to get my MBA degree in technology so that I can understand the business side of things. And I want to, because I never had that education. When you go on the computer science track or IT track, you don't get that business side of education that you're supposed to have, in order to do
No.
that. You don't have it. To be honest
Right.
with you, no school, no engineering school or computer science school gives you that education at all. So now all of a sudden you're pushed into this thing that because you've been in the field for 5-7 years, you should be managing people. You don't have
Yep.
the skill set. You don't even know how to run an organization, you know?
You probably don't want to either. Like, oh, that's terrifying. Ah. And
Yeah,
those
can
people
I
have
work
really
on
hard
two
time.
projects and give me a
Yeah,
bigger paycheck?
yeah, exactly.
Or give me
And
a
those
bigger
people
role.
have really,
I want to be an architect. Maybe I want to be an architect, maybe not a
yeah,
tutor because I'm good with frameworks and stuff like that, you know?
right. Let me design stuff instead. Yeah, yeah. I see a lot of those new managers and those being pushed into management have a tough time with the difficult conversations, right? Which is super key to leadership. Having tough conversations is just so critical to leadership, and yet that is often where I see technical staff, even ones who actually want to be leaders, typically will really struggle and kind of fall on their face because, like, I don't want to talk, like, I don't want, what's he going to think about me when I'm done and all this. So tough conversations is really an area that I've been focusing on with our technical leadership to make sure that they have training in that. It's just so critical these days to have those tough conversations with people.
Yeah, I mean, imagine there's a layoff and you're told that, you know, in order to meet the budget, you have to lay off two of your people.
Yeah,
How do you
yeah,
select those two? What conversation are you going to have? Some
right,
HR organizations are a little bit better. They train you a little bit, you know, give you some training or at least
yeah,
one questionnaire on how to deal with it, you know?
right. Here's your page. Yeah, yeah. Back when I did it, that was. I'll be honest, that was one of the most traumatizing parts of my life, of my management career, was having to firing someone was bad enough, right? But that was kind of their own doing, right? They created a condition, but having to let someone go just because the company couldn't afford them anymore, and I'm sorry that you're not going to have food on the table tomorrow, but I got to let you go. That was really tough for me. So
Yeah,
yeah,
in my case, I was so scared, one, that I have to
yeah,
do this, and then
yep,
I had to, like, I've never done this before. What do you mean that I have to let go of someone,
yeah,
right? Yeah, you hired them, you have to let them go now, you know? You know, you have to decide which two, you know? And then I must have not slept for like
yeah,
a week or two that I could not like I did that to another human being. Like I
yeah,
had to go through that education. It was the one of the roughest times in my life, you know. Like
absolutely.
rougher than even failing at certain projects, I would say.
Right. Oh yeah,
That you can say,
100%.
oh, you know, these things we did wrong. You analyze it and do something with it. Well, but when it affects a human being, what do you do?
Right. You kind of have to swallow your pride, everything that you believe in. Like, I don't want to do this. This isn't right. This is nothing good about this. Yeah. I had the blessing one time. So I actually did a layoff, and it happened a couple times in the past from my department. And I kind of saw the cycle happening. And so as people left my department, I did not rehire them. So I kind of saw this downtrend happening. And when it came time for another layoff, they came to me, the CFO came to me and said, okay, what two or three people are going to choose? And I showed him how this time, rather than replacing people as they left, I had not replaced people because I saw this already happening. And he said, okay. And when it came to the layoff period, my department was the only one that didn't lose anybody. And those guys thought I walked on water. Like, what did you do?
That's just managing the process better.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what I just shared with you, I had to go through that personal development, right? I wouldn't call it success or failure. It's just growth, you know, it's just learning and growth. In your case, what does that look like to as you were building up your leadership skills in the IT industry?
Um, for me, because I came from that shy, low self-confidence, for me, it was about believing in myself. I've seen so much, and this is going to sound a little esoteric. I'll give you some science behind it. I really believe that believing in yourself is just super critical. You're not going to go after something you don't believe in because your mind won't let you. It's going to say, hey, that's going to end in failure. It's going to find every reason for you not to go down that path. You can't be more financially successful than you believe you can be. You can't have more health than you believe you're worthy of. You can't achieve more than you believe you deserve. So it really comes down to belief for me. And I'm sure you guys have all heard the story about the Roger Bannister, right? And the 4 Minute Mile. For years and years, for something like since 1886, no one believed you could blow away the 4 Minute Mile. And then Roger Bannister did it, and he did it being the first guy. So he had no role model to work off of. He just simply believed, yes, I believe it can
There
be
was no
done.
North Star.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he strove to beat that thing. And when he did it, suddenly someone else did it. The next year, 3 people did it in the same race. So it was just mental limitations. And I've
And now
seen
high
this
school
so often.
students do it
Yeah,
regularly.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, a couple of thousands of athletes have done it by now. It's a big achievement for them. But back in the day, they believed your heart was going to explode if you did it. And Roger didn't do the customary coach. He did not have a coach. He said, I'm going to teach myself. I know how to do this better than anybody else does. And he taught himself how to do it. So, don't necessarily think you have to do it the way everybody else is doing it. This also speaks to business leaders, right? Who believe that, well, no one else has done it before. I don't know if I can do it. Believe in yourself. Set that new precedent, because just because no one else has done it before doesn't mean it can't be done. And once you do it, everybody else will go, oh, it is possible. And suddenly they'll do it too. Just like that. It was a mental limitation. And I have seen so many places in my own life where I remember I went to, I don't know if you're familiar with Tony Robbins, but his Date with Destiny event. And I went there. And at that event, I realized everywhere in my life I was limited, was my own doing. No one had come along and said, put me in a box, or said, don't go there. You're not good enough for that. I had done that to myself. And I'm pretty sure we all do this. We all create boxes and limitations around ourselves that we don't have to. If you can look past that, you can achieve amazing things. I promise you. I came from penniless and almost homeless to where I am now.
Definitely. Now, I've had a cast of characters. When I say characters, I mean from amazing people to extremely weird people, right? Throughout my career,
Hopefully I'm on the one.
But I'm not judging any one of them. Everybody has their own thing that they do, right? One situation, that I was involved in, because the person worked for me. The person would go out and come back from lunch with a big gulp, the 7-Eleven big gulp.
Yeah.
And then the thing is, I don't drink. So my senses are highly sensitive to when I smell alcohol. I can, if you walk in and you are 50 feet away, I know you had a drink. I know. I don't have to do a breathalyzer.
Right.
Once, twice, three times. Apparently this person had a challenge. Personal challenge with alcohol, right?
Yeah.
And whenever they went out to lunch in their big gulp, they would actually add alcohol in the big gulp so that they can sit down, do their coding, drinking and coding, right? And they were drinking. And the thing is, when you're in a coding, pod, you're very close to each other, right? Personally, as well as body odor and everything else,
Yeah.
So once, twice, three times, and then finally I approached the person about, I thought maybe it was BO, maybe that. No, it's not. And then I said that, look, I'm very sensitive to this, because the person reported into me. It's not like it was a coworker peer, They could have told me to F off, So I sat down with them. I said, look, I know that you've been drinking, and at work you can't drink. You're not allowed to. And I'm giving you, this is going to be my only warning. That's it. No more warning.
Too dangerous. Mm-hmm.
I'm giving you a verbal warning, because this was for a power, for a power company. So that you really needed to be extremely careful, right?
Yeah.
Last warning. Either, I don't care if you drink outside. I'm not judging you. That's
your own time,
prerogative, your time. But when it's 9 to 5 here, you can't drink.
Right.
And then the person laid off a little bit and then went back. And then unfortunately, second time around, I had to involve HR to exit them that day. That's it. It didn't matter how great they were. This was like they were causing a dangerous situation in the workplace by doing that. So when you come across these kind of interpersonal this is a different kind of an interpersonal conflict, right? But there are sometimes you have team members that are butting heads all the time, right? If both of them are great, then you are in a bad position, as a boss, right? Because they're both very good, and who do you discipline, right? And who do you piss off, So what were some of your stories like when it comes to like interpersonal? I'm sure that you have plenty of it in 35 years.
Well, yeah. For me, I worked with a guy who had a meth addiction.
Wow.
And there wasn't anything obvious at first, but like we went in, like someone came and reported to me that he went in the server room and the guy was in there with his shirt off, and it's 68 degrees in the server room, and he was just sweating like crazy. And just all these little hints about it. I had friends who did it, so I was familiar with with what it looked like. But then one day he made a toolbox for me, and it had all these great tech tools in it. And he was so excited to show me. And he opened it up, and there was a vial in it. He's like, "Oh, I don't know how that got in there," and he ripped it back out. And I'm just like, "Oh," and it was the same kind of thing. Like, I'm his boss. I got to do something. I can't pretend this isn't happening. I know it's a reality here. So I thought about it for quite a while, and I realized that I'm doing him a disservice by not having the conversation. Number one, and how I decided to approach it was like, I want to help you, man. This is tough. It can be addictive. I get it. So I want to, I'll help you get help. I want to assist you to get the help that you need. But you can't keep doing this. And if I find it, any cause of this again, then I'm going to have to let you go. And he denied it and denied it and denied it. And so, yeah, for the good of the team, I had to say, I can't have you around anymore. I'm sorry. This is just too high a risk, too much liability. We had transformers and generators and things like that. And if an accident happened, right, and I didn't do anything about it, and someone found out that I knew and didn't do anything about it, that could be terrible consequences. So, yeah, that was a big one. That's another one. I had one of the best employees I ever had. So if you're a manager, and even if you're not a manager, I can tell you one of the greatest skills that managers look for is the ability to give you something and have you run with it till the very end, and either come back and say it's done, or come back and say, here are the obstacles I'm running into. How can I get past these? And just knowing that whatever you give someone is going to be taken care of, that is gold to any kind of leader. And if you're not in a leadership position, then take that skill. I promise it'll do you a world of good. But this guy was an HR nightmare. He kept getting in trouble with HR over and over and over. I remember one day he decided to lift up his shirt and put it against the glass to the customer service team that was all in front of him, and just things like this all the time. He thought he was being funny, and his approaches with women was terrible. And, and again, it was the same kind of situation where this guy is gold. Everything I give him, I know it's going to be taken care of. But I couldn't keep him around for HR reasons. And I had the conversation. And time number 4, I'm like, you've given me no choice, man. I'd love to have you around. You're a phenomenal worker, but I just cannot run the risk of having you do something inappropriate anymore. So gotta let you go. So yeah, I'm familiar with those.
It's very ironic, right? Talented people who are very good at what they do, and then you have that sort of a personality flaw that ends up like killing your career potentially, depending on, because what does the next employer ask you? Why did you leave that job? Right?
Exactly.
That's always a question. How do you answer that question? Oh, I didn't like the environment, and they didn't like me because they didn't appreciate my
style approach to women or something.
Bare belly that I was exposing all the time.
It was too.
So how do you there are always challenges, right? I mean, sometimes not every project goes your way, right? Whether it's in IT or marketing, it doesn't matter. Not everything goes your way. Sometimes you have your, what I call them, there's successes, and then there are nature giving you learnings, a good beating. Other people call it failures. I don't think it's a failure. When you don't want to change anything, then it's a failure. But if you intend to learn from it to do something, then it's a learning. So, but how do you stay motivated through those kind of challenging times around your growth mindset that you have in your career?
So one of the keys I found early on, and I had a teacher who kind of taught me this, and I really ran with it, was learning to reward yourself. And it sounds silly, but if you think about it, like somewhere along the lines, we realized that if we train our animal, we can train our animals to do whatever we want by giving them rewards when they do something we like and punishing them when they do something wrong. And it works great, right? Dogs, for a perfect example, cat, whatever it is. I mean, not a cat, but horses, right? Whatever it is, we reward them for the behaviors that we like, and we punish them for behaviors we don't like. Well, somewhere along the line, we said, well, let's do this with our children too. And so it's built into us. Teachers, right? 80% of teachers do a reward system of some kind. We are programmed to go toward the rewards. And yet, typically as overachievers, we as soon as we hit that goal, we're like, okay, what's next? Okay, what's next? We never stop to take the time to celebrate the successes and to reward ourselves for what we've done. What if you thought about your next vacation instead of a break from work as a reward for kicking butt at work? now it's got a whole different flavor to it, right? So I have learned to reward myself. Even if it's a small thing, a small reward. If it's a big thing, a big reward. But reward yourself along the way. And it sounds silly and it seems really trivial. But over time, it builds up. Like if you want to go in a certain direction, start rewarding yourself for it. And you will find that your subconscious is like, oh, okay. And you don't have these sudden urges to go do other things when it gets difficult. So rewarding yourself is a massive way to build up that momentum to go after something challenging or difficult or get through a tough time.
And those rewards, by the way, don't have to be gigantic things. It's not like, oh, I'm going to
Exactly.
go, after I finish this, I'm going to go to Disney World, right? Or I want to go to
Right.
Bali. It could be as simple as, whenever I deliver a project, the guilty thing I'm going to do, and actually to reward myself, I'm going to stop by the ice cream shop and get myself this ice cream, right?
Yep.
And to you,
Yep.
symbolically, it doesn't cost even $10. You buy that thing. Whenever that happens, you stop on your way, you get it, you enjoy that ice cream, and you feel, you know what, that's your reward for doing that thing you said that you're going to do. I've actually
Exactly.
set those kind of rewards. Well, one of the things is a horrible habit. I'm not condoning it to anyone. That when I was younger, every project, every company that I helped launch, as soon as we launched it and we were done, my celebration was one cigar.
Nice.
One cigar when I was young.
Cool.
I don't do that anymore. It's been
Yeah,
a long time. Even though now I actually launched many companies now. So I'll become a chronic smoker if I do that
Right.
now.
Yeah.
So I
I
stopped
started
doing
back
it.
smoking from doing that once, but yeah, no, I get it.
But once it was once in a while, maybe 3 or 4 times a year, it was okay. But now it's like every 6 weeks I'm launching something, so then I'm going to become a smoker. So I stopped that
Don't do
habit.
that.
So
Yeah.
I decided the reward from now on, that it cannot be that I need to replace it with something else.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be, talk to a friend or hang out somewhere with somebody you haven't seen for a while. Or if it's a big one, like I bought myself a drone one time. Like I bought myself a drone. It was fun. And so I in my mind, I created an experience of fun with accomplishing something difficult. And that goes a long ways, I promise. It really works.
Definitely does. Yeah, don't pick up. I just want to make sure that my audience understands that I'm not condoning smoking. So please don't start smoking.
Don't do that.
And if you're smoking cigarettes or cigars, try to quit. Do your best to quit. So I'm definitely not condoning it. You talked about overcoming these things. What is one of your proudest moment in your career, or like one of the projects that went your way and it was a phenomenal success? It could be any time, in your
Yeah.
career.
As a manager, one of the greatest things I ever heard from a guy was I had an employee tell me he would take a bullet for me. He said, "Man, I would jump in front of a bullet for you." I was like, "Okay, that means a great deal."
That didn't
I don't know
happen,
if it's
did it?
true. No, never had to put
Oh, thank God.
that
Okay.
unfortunately, but that was a really big one for sure. Let's see, what else? For me, it was public speaking was one of my greatest fears growing up. It was just ultra terrifying for me. And so moving into a field of public speaking of some kind, I pushed myself all the time to take public speaking. I knew I was going to have to as a leader, right? It's not something you can just pretend you're not going to be good at. You've got to do it. So I call it pushing on fear. I pushed on that fear over and over and over and over. I signed up for Toastmasters. I did voiceover work,
Wow.
like anything I could do. And it's still to this. And what most people don't know, I've done like hundreds of podcasts. I've done webinars. I've done trainings. It still scares me. I didn't sleep well last night knowing I was going to come hang out with you today. So
I'm very easygoing guy. You gotta
you
be
are a very
fine.
easygoing guy. Yeah, you made this pretty painless. Thank you. Let's see. What are some of the other ones? Let's see. Trying to think of some other ones. So, I know one. It happened. My father passed 2 years ago. In fact, in
Sorry to
February.
hear that.
Thank you. And he was one of those kind of parents who never said he was proud of you. It was always like, I got an A minus. Well, why did you get an A? Just push all the time, right? Which I'm sure created a lot of this drive that I have in me. But he was never satisfied, always pushing. In fact, the day I got my tech degree and I graduated with honors, I was so excited. I spent 2 years straight. It was an accelerated program. I spent 2 years straight. I had 2 weeks off at Christmas time, and that was it for 2 weeks. and I had to take the bus because it wasn't making very much money. So it was like the bus down to school, the bus up to work, the bus back to home every day for 2 years. And I graduated with honors. When I walked off that stage, my dad looked at me and said, "Well, now you can get a real degree." I was like, I had 2 minutes. I had 2 minutes to appreciate that success I had. Anyway, so
No,
my
but
dad
was
retired.
that to be clear? Because the thing is, I have a little bit of that personality. I'll
Yeah.
explain. It's not that extreme.
Okay.
Was it that was his way of like dry sense of humor, but
No, he
it's
wanted me to succeed.
borderline, or he was very serious?
Yeah, he wanted me to be very successful. He came from a place where he was super poor, and he did not want his children to be that way. So he was pushing me to be as successful as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have a nephew. He went to the best high school, really top of the class, right? Where his
Yeah.
class, I mean, top of the class meaning that his class, if most people would get 100 or more on every
Yeah.
exam. If the kids got 98 or 99, they were considered to be not so smart,
Oh,
out of
wow.
100, because everybody got
Wow.
100 or above. That's the guy. That's the group he was in, right?
Okay.
So whenever I knew that was the case, because he had told me that, right? Whenever he would come back, and I knew that he was studying for, he's a nephew of mine. I love him to death. He lives next door to me, right? He goes like, I said, "How did that test go?" "Oh, I got a 96." I said, "Do you know that they give out hundreds? I heard from you that they give it out to the other kids, hundreds. So what happened? Why didn't you get your 4 points?" But he knows that I'm joking with him. I joke with him. I've joked with him all his life. He knows that I'm
Okay.
joking with him. I don't
Good.
mean it
Good.
to be serious. It's just dry sense of humor.
Be careful. You maybe create that crazy amount of drive in that kid, just like my father did in me.
No, I mean, he's
So
already driven. He's really
okay.
smart. I'm very proud of
Good.
him.
Good.
He's extremely smart, and he does really well, right? But he knows that, and I also have a niece, another from another brother of mine. My other niece, she's an overachiever, also extremely overachiever. And one time I caught her upset that she had gotten a 97.
Oh.
Right? I talk about like overachiever. I said, "You know what? Things work out. Don't worry about it. Whether you got a 97 or 83, it will work out. Don't worry about it. You did really well. So focus on that,
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
So back to the story. So my father was retired. He was retired Navy and retired federal government. And he invited me to join his poker night with his VA buddies. And I went down there, and somehow the conversation came up. So what do you do to me? And so I told him what I was doing. And I told the group, what I've been doing and where I got to, and some of the successes in my life. And he never in my life did I ever hear, "I'm proud of you." Not once, ever. But I looked over at him, and suddenly it clicked. I'm like, he brought me here to show me off. He wanted that question to come up so I could talk about it, so he could be so proud of the success his son had got. And it's like a drill sergeant telling you did a good job. You never hear, "I'm proud of you," and you can see it beaming in his face. I suddenly got it that he really was proud of me, and that meant a great deal.
Yeah, I mean, what is a typical question could that come up? "Hey, James, what do you do?" Right? In a
Yeah,
poker game.
right. Exactly.
"Oh, I do XYZ. This is who I
Right.
work with. These are the
Yeah.
companies: Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Samsung, whatever." Right?
Yeah.
We're doing this interesting project. All he has to do is sit back, have a gigantic smile on his face. He doesn't have to say anything. You're already doing the job for him, and
Yeah.
all he's doing is being proud of you.
Yeah. He didn't care if I could play poker or not. So
I'm sure that you had never played poker in your life. You go like, "Why is my
oh
dad
no,
bringing
no,
me to a poker game?"
no. Never. I didn't do great, but I did okay. Held my own. I beat him actually, so it was felt better.
One of the most challenging times in my career, it was again in my 20s when I was running Vitamin Shop, right?
Yeah.
We came across these projects, competing projects, right? Competing demands. That happens to every person in IT and development and coding and stuff like that. On one side of it, I was trying to keep a live site and generating revenue and marketing and grow that business. And on the other side of it, I had to migrate this damn old beast into a brand new platform that would give
Yeah.
us more functions and features to be more competitive, right? So you can see
Sure.
that, like, It's like, I mean, luck would have it that nature gave me twins as kids, because even nature decided that I can handle it, right? A boy and a girl, right?
Nice.
So I went like, this is very funny. Nature is doing this to me, right? And this happens to me in my professional life all the time. One side of it, you're trying to compete and to grow, go against the competition to grow this business, and on the other side
Right.
of it, internally, you're trying to compete with launching a brand new site. And I would say that the most growth I had in my career was at that time, right there. I learned more
Cool.
about myself. I learned more about
Right.
competing demands. I learned about communication skills. I was not so good at it, reflecting back, right? I should have communicated better with the CEO and others and stuff like that. So when it comes to, I know the struggles, I understand the struggles of, let's say Cisco puts out completely brand new set of firmware upgrades and new switches, and the wiring needs to be changed out and all of that stuff. And that's one side of it. And at the same time, the highly available systems cannot be turned off. It cannot be offline, right? And
Right.
your people need to take vacation, and they need to go get married and go to sleep and stuff like that. How do you manage that chaos, that those competing demands and responsibilities in your work as a leader?
A lot of times we will assign text to clients. So unlike most MSPs where you call just a random person on the phone, we actually like to assign a tech to your environment so they can become familiar with you and your environment. So when something's going to happen for a project, so first of all, we'll bring in a project team, right? But that point of contact will be front and center for that. So we make sure we schedule it around the life of that person so they can go get married or go to Disneyland or whatever it is for them. That's a big part of what we do for success is we assign a person per client, and then we work around that schedule. So that tends to help quite a bit with that challenge.
Yeah. So what I just pointed to just now about poor communication skills, right?
Yeah,
And from my history, so can you reflect back on, like, how do you prioritize and implement like effective communication, not just within your team, but also stakeholders, right? The C-level executives, board of directors, whoever you need to,
right.
they need to approve your budgets and stuff, right? Those
Yeah, yeah,
people,
yeah.
right? How do you prioritize that and implement effective? If you could go through just the different examples of both within your team as well as up the chain and across
Yeah,
also your peers.
sure. Within the team, with the people that I serve, I push a big sense of ownership, right? This isn't my client, it's your client. And how are you going to take care of this client? How are you going to communicate to the stakeholders at their location what's going to happen? So we put the onus on the technician to have a huge sense of ownership about it. And I do it myself, right? Everything that happens in the organization under my direction is my fault, period. And everything that goes well is somebody else's credit. So I make sure that I demonstrate a massive sense of ownership and then let that cascade on down so everyone else does as well. So it's a great place to start. It's just let everybody have that sense of ownership and believe that they can make a difference, believe that they are in charge of communication, and it's really theirs to own. And when you not only say that, but demonstrate that, give them the ability to make those decisions. They may reflect it back to you like, hey, here's a decision I made. What do you think about this? Let them own that decision. Create a sense of ownership. That goes so far in any sense of communication, even with the introverted people. I had this total introvert worked for me. And I remember I sent him to a branch office, and the manager had a list of things that he needed to accomplish. And he went there and he came back. I'm like, did you get all those done? He's like, got them all done. I'm like, fantastic. And an hour later, the manager called me up and said, where is your guy? And I was like, so yeah, I can very much relate to that. So we got to teach, especially for tech, especially for introverts, you got to teach. It's, doing the job is fantastic, but unless anyone knows about it, you did not do the job, right? It is not recorded until someone has confirmed and said, yes, I see that, and I can check off that box or whatever. That's certainly a big part of it is teaching ownership and teaching introverts to be able to, but the job isn't done until someone else checks it off. So I would certainly direct people that direction. As far as upwards goes, learning to report up is tough. It's trying to find a balance, right? Do I want to make sure the person I report to is informed and can make proper decisions? I don't want to bombard with some crap that doesn't mean anything to them or will be meaningless or too much detail. So a lot of times I'll say default to too much detail and then set the expectation with them. Hey, this is too much information. Let me know. If there are parts of this you'd like me to run with, let me know. And that way, and then, what do you want me to report to? What are you interested in? Start with a conversation with these folks to say, what is it you want to hear? What is it you need in order to make the decisions you have to make? That'd be my answer.
Just to kind of reflect on that a little bit, in my career, what I've noticed is when I was in an organization like that, where there was an upper people and lower people, or your
Yeah.
team members and stuff like that. As a leader, I felt like one of the jobs I had was when there was too much stuff coming down from the top down, right? Not everything needed to be given to the team, because the team has
Right.
its schedule. They're working on things. They will get distracted, whether it's because sometimes there's a lot of nonsense that needs to be figured out before it gets implemented, right? And so that I would cushion the team from that everyday nonsense, because that just causes a lot of chaos in the organization, and I didn't want to do that. And then on a weekly basis or monthly basis, then I would review those kinds of things with them, the things that still were an issue that we needed to discuss within our team, so that we can prioritize those things and then we can work on them. That's the stuff coming down, right? When it goes up, because I was involved in these coding teams and stuff like that, what I learned, one of the things I had learned, and I would like you to kind of reflect on it too, that if it's good news, we could wait till Thursday happy hour to go and celebrate, right? So that our team can go out, we can have chicken wings and enjoy ourselves and stuff like that. That's fine. But when it's bad news, we need to jump on it as quickly as possible, right? That don't
Yeah.
don't sit on it, because sitting on it does not help. It just gets
Right.
worse and worse and worse. So that's something that could have been done. Maybe you're an SVP, maybe there's an EVP that if you had that knowledge, if you sat down with them, they may give you some kind of perspective that you could tweak it, and then you just resolve this major mess that you thought you had, right? That's the other thing I learned. Like, good news, you could celebrate it a little bit later when everybody's available, right? But when it comes to bad news, you really need to jump on that thing as quickly as possible. And
Absolutely.
and your team should have the confidence that when there is bad news, that you can be trusted as a leader for them to bubble it up, not that you're gonna blame them for something.
Down them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that perspective a great deal, because I 100% believe that your team needs the sense that you have their back, right? Because you want to create some loyalty. Tell someone, I got your back when they've just messed up. That will make such a massive difference. I had a guy call me up, and I could tell he was terrified. It was like his first couple of weeks here, and he had instead of copying one way, copied the wrong way and replaced the existing drive with the blank data. And my response was, look, hey, I've been there. I got your back, man. We'll figure this out. And that goes so far to create loyalty with people. They're like, this guy's got my back, right? And it's massive. People, when you do that repeatedly and demonstrate that you've got their back, they will work over and above for you. And when you call them out and say, I need this done, they're going to jump, because they know that it's important to you and you matter to them a great deal, because you've got their back.
And that person is never going to repeat that error again.
Exactly.
Ever.
Yes.
Ever.
Yes, exactly.
You hope that they're smart. They will never ever repeat that mistake again.
100%. Yeah.
James,
So yeah, having people's back is huge.
James, it's been phenomenal having you on the show and sharing your kind of your IT leadership journey. I always ask my guests, what is your number one $100,000 expert insight into your journey, so that anyone that's starting out in the IT industry in sort of a leadership role, or starting out in a non-leadership role that leads to a leadership role, that you can impart on them, any of your insights from your 35 years of experience?
Yeah. So the best advice I ever got, and I'll put in the form of a story. So my daughter got diabetes when she was 13. She was type 1. And just as a PSA out there, if you do not know the signs, if you have children or are going to have children and don't know the signs of diabetes, please understand them. I found my daughter passed out on the floor of her room one morning, and it was awful. But she had to take shots, and she had to check her blood sugar. And so she felt very ostracized and very different from the rest of the group. So we put her in a summer camp one year. And it was a diabetic summer camp. So all the kids were testing their blood sugar. All the kids were taking insulin. So it was just something that we all did. And before I went, one of my employees, his son had gotten diabetes at age 5. He gave me the best advice I've ever gotten. And he said, when you go there, you will notice that there are two groups of parents. One group of parent is, why did this happen to us? Poor us, our poor son. What are we going to do? Oh, why did this happen? Why does God hate us? Whatever words you want to